WSB, 100 years strong. A look at the past, present, and future of the three most trusted letters in Atlanta history. Here's your host, Chris Chandler.
From the roaring 20s to a raging pandemic, from the voice of the South to Atlanta's news and talk, from AM to FM to a tap on your phone, the history of WSB is the history of an industry. It's the history of a city, and it's the foundation of everything you hear from us in 2022. March 1922, Atlanta's then competing newspapers, the Journal and the Constitution, racing to the wire to be first with the wireless, even though there were barely 1,000 radios in all the city. Well, the Fed's first winning telegram came too.
The Atlanta Journal is authorized.
We went on the air with the weather, using borrowed equipment and a slapdash studio at a building that's still there on Forsyth Street downtown. Were those call letters picked to mean Welcome South Brother? No, they were randomly assigned, no matter what you've heard. That motto was adopted later. We moved to the Biltmore in 1925, the hotel downtown that still has the antennae-looking thing sticking off the top. WSB carried the very first NBC network show in 1926 and invented the chimey station ID signal, which you'll probably hear in your sleep tonight. In the 30s, the Great Depression. Gone with the Wind's premiere in Atlanta. And around the turn of the decade, we finally moved to and settled on 750 AM. World War II, 20 news programs a day produced here. And we were one of the few stations in the country.
The Little Country Church program brought to you by Vitamins Plus.
Pressing women into service on the air with the menfolk off fighting the war. Our news director, a fellow named Wright Bryan, covered the invasion of France, D-Day, in 1944.
Before I could look up, they began jumping.
Late 40s, radio ruled the entertainment roost, young people at home nights taking care of the kids, or making them. But the early 50s, well, the early 50s were pretty dire. The network stars, the advertisers, the primetime audience had all fled radio for TV.
New shows on WSB Radio.
But our longtime, very brilliant general manager, Elmo Ellis, came up with Shake the Rust Off Radio, a series of innovative, profitable local programs. It gave the station a new lease on life. In 1955, we left our Sky Room studio overlooking Atlanta's famous Peachtree Street for the building called White Columns in Midtown. We are still here. The building, long gone, but 4 original columns remain in the courtyard. At the turn of the 60s, the first WSB Skycopter took to the air. We brought Atlanta the sounds of the civil rights era.
He dreamed of a day when peace would be a reality and brotherhood a meaningful blessing enjoyed by all mankind.
Of course, the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King in 1968.
The final score, Braves 3 and the Dodgers 2.
The Braves arrived from Milwaukee in 1966, and we were there for Hank Aaron's 715th in 1974.
The fireworks are going. Listen to this crowd.
You know, pundits have been saying AM radio is dead since about 1950, and it's hard to realize this station could easily have faded into memory and history a long time ago. It was on its way at one point. But especially compared with our competition, WSB has had and earned, honestly, more lives than a cat by changing with the times instead of clinging to the past. A new crew arrived here, and they stayed. You know their names: Scott, Clark, Neil, Belinda. When the weather turns hellish, you know the rest. Jamie in Washington, Captain Herb, Chris Camp, Condis, right through the arrival of CNN in Atlanta, the '88 Democratic Convention, the Olympic bombing, and of course,
we are under attack.
Continuing team coverage of this breaking news out of New York, where a plane has crashed into one of the World Trade Center towers.
Jamie, what's the latest?
There is clearly large black clouds of smoke coming right over from the Pentagon.
This plume of dust and smoke covers 2 or 3 square miles where this building has just collapsed in New York City.
This is hard, and there are hard times that we will work through.
Through Snowmageddon,
Not to lose my mind, like literally. It's horrible.
One Atlanta driver, the governor has declared a state of emergency this hour. Some metro schools may keep their kids overnight.
Just got an update from Traffic Trooper Bill. He says folks are driving like morons. Just calm down, everybody. Get your headlights on. It's going to be a while if you're involved in a crash for authorities to get to you. Triple team traffic.
The bridge collapse, our crazy 2020 election, and
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp confirmed the positive test results Monday night.
We have 2 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Georgia.
Dark and confusing days, and we are grateful you turned to us, our biggest audience in 30 years at the height of the pandemic in 2020. Proof we're an institution, but still as vital and current as the headlines. In 2021, the top of the industry Marconi Award for Legendary Station of the Year. All that pales, though, of course, in comparison to what all of you and all of us have accomplished together. $28 million over 21 years for the Child Cancer Battling Carathon. Clark's Christmas Kids, by now a 3-decade-long tradition, you provide toys for every foster child in Georgia. This is how we're going to continue as well. WSB moves into its 2nd century as by some measures the most listened to news talk station in the country. With the daily schedule of Atlanta's morning news with its 4:30 a.m. start, Eric Von Hessler's Von Hessler Doctrine now in its 7th year, The Eric Erickson Show, which succeeded Rush Limbaugh at noon, Atlanta radio alum Sean Hannity at 3 o'clock and 10 o'clock, Atlanta's News and Talk with Mark Aram with the Bananas and me doing the news at 4 o'clock, and Word on the Streets, Shelley Winter and Milani Kai at 7. It is a tribute to everybody whose skill and commitment you've just heard about that after 100 years, and despite tremendous change in both Atlanta and the broadcasting industry, the WSB remains a consistent leader in audience ratings, was honored with the National Edward R. Murrow Award in 2019, in addition to that Marconi we mentioned earlier. More importantly, our listeners, you, continue to return that commitment with donations of millions of dollars or toys, blood, school supplies, disaster relief, anything we ask of you. That bond between institution and audience has endured for a century and continues strong as ever into a second. Welcome South, brother, and depend on it.